Hi everyone, my name is Jenny Snell. I'm the IWill National Development Officer for Scotland, working out of YouthLink Scotland. And it's really amazing to have you all here this afternoon for our final webinar in our Power of Youth series for IWill Week in Scotland. So this webinar is about youth social action in education, and we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers coming up. So just a few housekeeping rules just to kind of kick us off. If we can keep ourselves on mute when we're on the kind of presentation stuff, that would be fantastic. It just helps with any background noise or interference, and then we'll have time at the end hopefully for some questions, and you can kind of jump in and chat then. Also, you'll have had a wee message when we come in. We're recording the session, so if you feel more comfortable turning your videos off and using the chat function, please feel free to do so as well. And if anybody has any kind of tech issues or questions, myself and Jane are both here from YouthLink and can try and help you as best as possible. So this session that we're looking at in terms of youth social action and education is around looking at what the IWill movement is for anyone who's not aware of it so far. We're going to explore the role of schools in supporting youth social action and volunteering, identify some of the benefits and challenges that come with that, provide some examples of how it's working in practice, and hopefully inspire you to kind of join the movement and support more young people to take action, make a difference and create change. So joining us today, we've got inputs from, like I said, a great lineup of speakers. We have got Karen and Jackie from the attainment team at Education Scotland. We've got Lindsay from the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative, and we've got Abby and Richard from Dunblane High School. So a really great lineup of speakers to kind of offer different perspectives on their kind of experiences of youth social action in school. But to start us off, I'm just going to speak a little bit about IWill in Scotland and where we are in terms of the movement and what's kind of coming next for us. So yesterday we launched our new strategic plan for IWill in Scotland. So up until now, the IWill campaign has been a UK-wide campaign that has been managed by Step Up to Serve at a UK level, and YouthLink Scotland has been the kind of lead for the campaign in Scotland since 2016, but it's always been very aligned to the UK strategic plan rather than having our own. This is the first time that we've had our own strategic plan in Scotland, which is really exciting, especially in terms of education, I think, because obviously we have a different education system in Scotland and there's different policy contexts that we're operating in. So it's really great that we've now got this strategic plan that we can kind of focus on in a more devolved way going forward. And you can see from the slide that's up just now that our strategic kind of vision going forward is to create a culture where participation in youth social action and volunteering is inclusive and accessible for all young people, regardless of their background or personal situations. And when we're talking about youth social action, we mean any activity that young people can take that makes a difference to their community, makes a difference to the environment, or makes a difference to wider society. So it could be anything from formal volunteering opportunities, fundraising, mentoring, befriending, right the way through to kind of campaigning and activism. So anything that makes a difference to others. And these are our new strategic kind of outcomes that we will be working towards between 2021 and 2026. Focusing on an increase in the number of young people taking part in volunteering and social action, specifically focusing on young people around low income backgrounds and ethnic minority backgrounds. There's been a bit of research done over the kind of the life of the campaign that's shown that there's still a lack of representation in kind of more marginalised groups in volunteering and social action. So we want to really see that gap narrow to the point where it doesn't exist. And we also want to see an increase in the number of organisations committing to the power of youth and offering more opportunities for young people to volunteer and take action. So just to set the scene a little bit, some of the things that we know from the kind of the life of IWill across the UK and in Scotland in terms of formal education. And we'll pop a resource in the chat box when I'm speaking here as well. That's our IWill for Education resource that was kind of developed at a UK level, but is relevant to a Scottish context as well. And hopefully this will just kind of give you an idea as to why it's important and what role kind of education has within social action before we move on to the next speaker. So we know that 21% of young people get involved in volunteering through schools. So schools are obviously a kind of key area where young people find out about volunteering opportunities and can take action. We have noticed a decrease in this from 2016, where it was 28%. So there has been a decrease. So there is still definitely more we can do through the IWill campaign and through other initiatives and projects to try and get that number a bit higher again. Like I said in the previous slide, young people from lower income backgrounds are much less likely to volunteer, both formally and informally, than young people from kind of your quintile 5 in the SIMD level. So we've got a kind of role for schools there as well that are maybe working with young people from those backgrounds to kind of help support them to think about the benefits of volunteering. I used to work in youth work in schools, and there was numerous examples come to my head of a young person who was maybe at risk of exclusion, who started working with youth workers on a one-to-one basis, who ended up 6 months down the line leading a youth volunteering programme or leading a youth forum. So there's a real opportunity for schools there as well to kind of be working with that background to kind of increase the participation levels. We also know that teachers are the second highest influence on young people's volunteering, kind of to start volunteering, and the highest is parents. So again, thinking about young people from lower income backgrounds, we can make an assumption that their parents maybe have other priorities that they're thinking about, maybe haven't volunteered themselves, so won't be influencing and inspiring their kind of kids to volunteer. So again, if teachers are the second highest influence on that, there's a really crucial role for them to kind of continue going forward. And a few other things around belonging and feeling connected to schools. So young people who are volunteering within their schools have that stronger kind of sense of connection and belonging. There's less likely to be so I think it's the next one down. There's more likely, to be higher levels of well-being and reduced levels of anxiety for young people who are volunteering or taking social actions. Just now more than ever, we know that employability is a big concern for young people. So volunteering in the Youth Guarantee kind of scheme is massive and qualities that can support young people into the future. And there's also studies showing that it can improve attainment going forward as well. And all of these kind of points will be in that resource that are in the chat. So I am going to stop talking now, and I'm going to pass over to Karen and Jackie from Education Scotland.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I'd just like to take this opportunity. Thank you for inviting us along. So it's much appreciated. My name's Jackie Ward and I'm an attainment advisor for Education Scotland, and I'm here with my colleague Karen Pride, and she's also an attainment advisor with Education Scotland. I work across Stirling and Cairns and Angus. So we're going to talk today just really about the link between attainment, social action and volunteering, and just really some examples of practice where it's happening. So I'm going to hand over to Karen first of all to give a little background to the Scottish Attainment Challenge.
Thanks, Jackie. Brilliant. Thanks, Jenny. So the Scottish Government's ambition for Scotland is to be the best place to grow up, and to achieve this, it was recognised that we needed to raise attainment and reduce educational inequity for all of Scotland's children and young people. So I'm not going to unpack what is understood by attainment in this context, as Jackie is going to cover this in a few slides. But the First Minister launched the Scottish Attainment Challenge, or SAC as it's known as, in February 2015 to bring a greater sense of urgency and priority to raising the attainment of children and young people living in areas of deprivation in order to close the equity gap. So in summary, that just is what I have on that slide there. But tackling inequity remains at the heart of the Scottish Government's agenda, even now, 5 years on, in order that every child can succeed in school and gain skills for life. And during these last 5 years, SAC has been driving forward improvements in educational outcomes to ensure that everyone is encouraged to be the best that they can be, which is underpinned by the National Improvement Framework, Curriculum for Excellence, and getting it right for every child. Thank you, Jenny. Next slide. So the Scottish Attainment Challenge focuses on the improvement priorities of literacy, numeracy and health and wellbeing that you can see framing the pyramid there. but also supports and complements a broader range of programmes and initiatives to ensure that all children and young people in Scotland reach their full potential, which you can just summarise very briefly through unpacking different tiers within the pyramid there. And if I start at the top, the national programme that you see there is funded by about £9 million is in that funding stream there, which provides, as it said there, teacher recruitment, third sector partnerships, also such as partnerships like Youth Link Scotland, for example, and also the CPAG, Cost of the School Day programme in there as well. Another funding stream is the Care Experience Children and Young People Fund, which totals 33 million across the 5 years. So I think we're at about 12.25 million in this current year. That is to help support and improve the educational outcomes of children and young people in this group. Moving into the Challenge Authorities and Schools programmes, which are two separate funding streams within the Challenge, totalling around £50 million annually, where we support 9 local authorities in the Challenge programme and 12 authorities in the Schools programme. So that's just where there's a bit more targeted and additional money to support those areas of need. At the bottom, we have our what's our universal programme, our universal offer, which is pupil equity funding, which 90 or over 95% of schools receive, and it's based on free school meal entitlement. So that totals about 120 million pounds per year, and currently is guaranteed for the next 2 years, leading to a bit of a, what would you call it, a transition year because of the election that's pending in May. So that's just a brief summary of what the Scottish Attainment Challenge looks like, and Jackie's going to talk a little bit more about perhaps some of the terminology and practice.
Thank you, thanks Karen. So I suppose one of the things here is, what do we actually mean by attainment? It's the Scottish Attainment Challenge, and so I suppose it is unpacking that a little bit. So the National Improvement Framework has a focus on excellence and equity for all, and the priorities around that are about improving literacy and numeracy. However, there also, as Karen was saying, they're around closing the poverty-related attainment gap, improving children and young people's health and well-being, but also improving their employability skills so they have got sustained and positive destinations. So the NIF measures and the measures within SAC, they don't just have that narrow view of attainment around literacy and numeracy. We're trying to look at that whole child, that whole young person. So we don't just need to consider literacy and numeracy, we also need to think about the outcomes and the attainments around health and well-being, around school leaver destinations, attendance, achievement, inclusion, as well as participation. And the thing is, there's going to be different measures for some of these concepts, but all of them probably should be relating to what the school or local authority are trying to improve or change. Okay, so there's lots of different measures here around attainment, but we've got to relate it to the context, and that's why it can't just, although we have NIF measures, we can also add to that, and that's what we do within PEF funding, and certainly within the schools programme funding and challenge authorities funding. The health and wellbeing side of things, that's where I was looking to sort of make some of the links, but Jenny's already made some of the links between the attainment, social action and health and wellbeing. There was one of the reports and evidence briefing I was looking at from NCBO in 2018, and what they spoke about was how there was definitely a causal relationship between volunteering, social action and mental health. So certainly in a time just now, and it couldn't be more relevant than it is just now, about children and young people's mental health. How do we actually support them to improve that? So if we give them links to that social action and volunteering, that can certainly help with that. However, what we have got to do is, and what we need to consider is, as Jenny was saying, is it equitable for all? Certainly that briefing, and we know ourselves when we look at it, that it said that volunteers, the way volunteers are sometimes recruited, means that having high social capital is needed to get involved in the first place. And that's certainly not what anybody's wanting to happen, that inequity of access. Certainly a local authority I was working with, they considered their Duke of Edinburgh and noticed that the young people did need that high social capital in order to get involved, and they actively did something about it to make it more accessible for everyone, which was great. However, another thing we actually need to think about when we're thinking about social action is how do we make it meaningful to children and young people? Because that's the thing, if it's not meaningful, they are less likely to be involved, and the impact of volunteering is more powerful when someone does it voluntarily. Okay, so if they find it meaningful, they're more likely to want to be involved and have a sense of ownership of their learning within it. And that's really important. So I'm going to talk about an example of that later on in Stirling, and Karen's going to talk about something around that too. However, what children and young people need to understand is what they're doing is appreciated, but also it's having an impact on others, because that's really, really important. It makes sense, it makes meaning to what they're doing. And the thing is, we're definitely getting there, as the recent PISA results show. Certainly when you're looking at global competencies, and when you're looking at those, they include tests on focusing on the ability to value information, formulate arguments, and to identify and analyse multiple perspectives. Scotland came out really well within that, and certainly people are looking at that and saying, well, that's an indication that Curriculum for Excellence is preparing our young people for this global economy. And certainly Larry Flanagan, what he was saying was that what he felt that PISA results show that tomorrow's schools will need to help students think for themselves and develop a strong sense of right and wrong. And he feels that this shows that Scotland's teachers are already successfully striving to do this, and that's shown through PISA. So I'm now going to hand over to Karen, and Karen's going to give you an example of how some of this is working in Angus. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Jackie. Yes, so we're going to look at participatory budgeting in Angus and just give you a bit of a potted history in terms of the journey that the local authority has been on in the last couple of years. I know that I won't do them justice, of course, in this short time frame, so I hope I've condensed it and not distilled it down too much and not miss the detail. So it's the current Angus Local Outcomes Improvement Plan 2017-2030 almost provided the local policy drivers for colleagues to take action. And that was, again, linking back to SAC and the overarching aim of this government around providing the best start for children and young people in Scotland. So it's very similar in Angus. Other drivers were the opportunities and making sure that people have what we need to succeed, again, aligning with the equity agenda. Mental health and wellbeing was key, and ensuring that communities are sustainable, safe, secure and vibrant. So the year of the young people, if you remember that in 2018, I'm sure we all do, and I'd like to say that probably every year is year of the young people, but that particular year provided I guess an amazing platform for Angus and Scotland to show how young people value their contribution, or how their contribution is valued to communities, and how we create new opportunities for them to shine locally, nationally and globally. So the activities in the year of the young people, if you remember, were based around 6 key themes. I'm going to focus specifically around education and participation, as well as health and wellbeing will be in there as well. And Angus Council were inspired at that point to update their approach to engaging with children and young people. And what they did was created a strategy, which was really the catalyst for participatory budgeting type activities to take place. So community planning partners came together with young people, and they identified a set of principles that were important to them about how young people wanted to engage in the process and how decisions that were made on behalf of them were affecting their life. So over 290 young people engaged from secondary schools across Angus in a survey about how they would like to be involved in decision making. And that then brought about a working group which proceeded with further activities which resulted in participatory budgeting. But the working group created what is now known as the Angus Youth Engagement Strategy, which is really condensed into a 2-page high-level document to inform any engagement that would be undertaken with children and young people that adheres to the key principles that were agreed. So the engagement embodied the 7 national standards for community engagement, which is inclusion support, planning, working together, methods, communication, and it's all centred around impact. There were also performance statements to assess the quality of participation and engagement and appraise the results that came out of all those activities. So colleagues in Angus recognised from that local outcomes improvement plan in 2017 that they couldn't achieve the 4 outcomes: involvement, opportunities, and the vibrant communities, etc., without the authentic collaboration of key stakeholders, which in this case are young people. So this really brought about the why. Why did they need a youth engagement strategy? Well, they needed it because that's what the young people were telling them. So they engaged in that inquiry and took, they evaluated what it was that they needed and why they needed to create this strategy, and ultimately what they needed to do. So what they were being asked is for young people to be involved in the decision making about what happens within their communities. So just to clarify then, before I get into participatory budgeting, it is just to ensure a universal understanding. It is a different way of managing public money, enabling people, or in this case young people, to make the call on how public budgets are spent. So those involved can play a part in the decisions that directly affect their lives and those of other young people in the community. So just reflecting then on what the impact, so how the local authority recognised the how in that situation, about how it works for them. So the strategy that came out, the Angus Youth strategy that came out of the community planning partnerships, move away from consultation and doing to the communities and children and young people to the co-production of services were really the catalyst to develop a further 3 priorities, again really linking with the aims of the Scottish Attainment Challenge around reducing child poverty, and linking again with the Angus's child poverty strategy, improving mental health and wellbeing, and improving accessibility and connectivity. And those aims were set pre-COVID, I have to say, but they're very pointed now. So this youth engagement strategy has been used to further consider how children and young people can, their participation can be developed over time. And in 2018, where the participatory budgeting, I'm just going to call it PB, it's probably easier, where PB was really established in Angus, there were 15 projects that were received a share of what was £40,000 at that time, and 12 of those 15 projects were fully funded from the Power of Youth Award, which was made available by Angus Council as part of its commitment to the year of the young people. So it was youth focused fund, and it was divided into 4, which gave £10,000 to different locality areas. And just to give a demonstration of some of the work, it was around children's learning partnership, Police Scotland YouTube filming project, family resource team, the Heart of Money Thief, which looked at health and wellbeing, and holiday programmes in Forfar and Kirriemuir. And it was just to say that what they were overwhelmed by was the number of people who engaged in the PB process. So there were 1,127 young people aged between 12 and 18 who engaged in this process of participatory budgeting. There were 35 bids made, which totalled £91,082.57, which far exceeded the £40,000 that was on offer. So it really showed that there was an appetite there. So if we could just fast forward to 2020, and the scale of participatory budgeting in Angus has vastly increased. Again, evidenced through those 7 national standards for community engagement, where that nugget of impact sitting at the centre has really been demonstrated in terms of increased confidence, increased engagement, increased participation, even in learning and wider activities. So each of the young people who were involved in the youth engagement strategy moving into participatory budgeting activities all received Saltire awards. They started to get recognition for the work. They were starting to see the real impact of what they were invested in, which was fantastic. So just to fast forward to 2020, and just to give you a sense of the scale, earlier this year there were 144 proposals received for a share of £200,000, and that was 684, almost 685 £100,000 in terms of what the ask was against the offer, which was quite overwhelming. But it was really just like to see the scale of how participatory budgeting has ramped up in Angus. going from what was, you know, quite a relatively small scale co-design into a strategy that developed into really impactful activity involving young people at the heart and their volunteering and their social action within that. So I think I've used up way too much time, and I'll pass over to Jackie. Apologies, Jackie.
That's all right. We were laughing about this earlier, saying about Karen using up all the time. So I'm just going to talk briefly about Stirling's Social Justice Ambassadors programme. That started probably quite a similar questions, but the questions were more around the use of PEF or schools programme funding, and it was how do we meaningfully consult and involve young people in the decision making around this funding. And not, for me, it wasn't just about any young person. It was how do we make sure that those young people and children affected by poverty are being included in these decisions. And it, as Karen was saying, it's not being done too. So we started that conversation with CLD in Stirling, and they already had a programme in place which worked really well about gaining children and young people's views, and they used it they called it the gatherings, and they had worked really, really well, and it was about getting their views on their communities and about how linking in with elected members as well. So this programme was already established and it was running really, really well. So I met up with the lead officer for youth participation, and she was keen and felt it would be appropriate because what we were thinking was this programme would sit really nicely with what we were trying to achieve with PEF and with the Scottish Attainment Challenge funding. And I worked with one of the youth workers, Fern, responsible for the programme, and we developed a programme that was really around equity. So the outcome was a programme which was around raising children and young people's views about the impact of poverty on their own lives as well as those of others, and the opportunities that was available to them. But it also trained them as researchers and gave them a task of researching equity and poverty within their own school or community and working with others to see what they could do about it. So this, for me, this wasn't just about involving them in decision making, it was about giving them an awareness and that meaningful knowledge so that they could really, really engage in a way where they had the knowledge to do it in a way that made sense to them. So we approached 2 schools about piloting it, and it was we were getting really positive feedback from the secondary and primary school, which was Riverside Primary and Wallace High School. They were really keen and had started it with some young people, but it was interrupted by COVID, as many things have been done. So at that point, things were left with those schools. But in the meantime, the CLD team and the youth participation team, they took this as an opportunity and totally grabbed it, and they developed the programme further, and they developed it into an interactive workbook for young people. So all the activities are quite, again, it's very interactive. It's about bringing meaning. We use videos. We use young people within the videos, and it's about that interaction with them afterwards, the discussions you have afterwards, which is really, really important. But they've done this, they've made videos to make that able to happen. And now the programme's being run in the 7 different secondary schools across Stirling. And again, that's by the youth participation team, and they're running it with a group of 8 to 10 young people. And so far, again, the different schools are at different stages of it. Some are quite far down the journey and others are just sort of starting it. But at one point we will join all the schools together. That's certainly the plan. So they can share, the young people can share their views and extend their learning as well. So it's not just about their own community. So the next stage of this, and certainly the schools are, once we have the information back from the children and the young people's research, is to use that to help inform the PEF and the schools programme funding, and also the school improvement plans as well. And the next steps for it is just really to think about how we take this programme to primary schools as well. So far it's at the early stages, but it has been a really positive response we've had from young people as well as the staff involved as well. So I'm very aware that it's now past. So thank you. And if you do have any questions, certainly I think there's time at the end for that. So thanks very much.
No, thank you so much, Karen and Jackie, for that input. That was really interesting, and some really great examples for us to think about as well. I am now going to pass over to Lindsay from the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative, sorry, to take us through the next part. So over to you, Lindsay.
There we go. We're all good with the slides, Jenny? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Great, perfect. Thanks everyone for having us. First, yeah, thank you, Jenny, for having us today. We really appreciate being part of this. We had a webinar last week that IWill joined us on, so it's lovely to be able to support you guys now on the Power of Youth Week. So I'm just going to talk a bit about specifically the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative, give you a bit of an insight into what that's doing, where we're working. But then Dunblane are going to kind of showcase what this looks like in practice as a school case study. So I'm just going to fly through, for those of you who aren't as familiar with the programme, just a brief introduction to what YPI is and what it's currently doing. So we have been working with schools for the last 12 years. It started as a pilot programme with a number of secondaries in Aberdeenshire. We're now this year working with 250 secondary schools, which is amazing given that we're in a very unusual and challenging year, but it is about 70% of all secondaries. So what is YPI? So YPI stands for the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative, which is an active citizenship programme which empowers students to make a difference in their communities while developing a host of skills. So each school has a £3,000 grant that they are to direct towards a local charity that is going to make impact within their local communities. It's delivered with a whole year group, and that's a purposeful sort of core feature of YPI, because we believe that every student, the equity of opportunity, ensuring that all students have the opportunity to engage in a process like this is incredibly important. It's delivered in a variety of curricular areas depending on the school context, and also a variety of year groups. So S2 to S6. Common modes of delivery are through RE, social subjects, PSE, a combination, or sort of there's sort of citizenship timetabled within a school as well, it might appear there. But basically each school has ownership of the programme to embed it in their own school context and make it their own. As the young people progress, so they will work in groups, they will each select a charity that they feel is making a difference in their community, and then create a business case for why they should win the £3,000 for their charity. Narrowed down, there's a final event where eventually one charity is awarded per school that grant to allocate into their communities. So that's a very high level overview of YPI, and happy to kind of pick up any questions that you may have. Our focus, we've obviously working in a very adapted year, but we're seeing some real innovation from our schools. YPI is about leaving the classroom behind, that experiential opportunity, engaging with charities, and we've had to adapt. And a lot of that is going online, but we're seeing some amazing practice from schools, even in this kind of challenging world that we find ourselves. I just wanted to now kind of touch on, we've recently launched a Citizenship Education paper on this, and I believe my colleague's going to share that with you all to take a look at. But basically it's looking at the power of citizenship education within the Scottish curriculum. What we observe is that YPI is a great vehicle to allow schools to deliver upon citizenship education. In Scotland, we know we're quite unique in that it's citizenship education is a capacity rather than being delivered by a particular subject area. And that means it's embedded in the culture and the ethos of all of our schools, and the ways in which they can deliver upon this varies, but allows kind of a whole school responsibility to support that. What we found is that this active citizenship education is most valuable and most impactful when it is student-led, and young people have a real opportunity to use their voice reflect on their personal drivers, that it's authentic, so it feels real. So I think the two examples that we've just heard, there's a real impact that young people can engage with, and I think that's really important. And that the young people, there's links to the curriculum and they understand where it fits in their wider learning journey, whether that's skills development or, you know, direct links to curricular activity. So what we found and what research has shown is the most difficult bit for schools sometimes is achieving that active component of citizenship education. And I think that's where programs like YPI provide a framework to allow that real world context to come to life. So I just wanted to share a wee example here. So this is an example from Shawlands Academy in Glasgow, quite a mixed demographic. And what they delivered YPI with their whole school year group in S2. One of the groups in particular were working, they'd identified loneliness as an area of interest for them. They were a nurture group, so they were a group that maybe weren't engaging as well with their sort of school environment, and were getting sort of extra support with that. What the teacher found was that the minute they were hooked in and felt that their voice was important, the engagement in school was pretty transformational. So they started engaging with a care home, they started building relationships, and they started realizing that their voice was really important. And one of the team members has quoted that it was completely transformational for her, because she realized that, you know, she did have influence, she did have power, and she would be listened to. They went on to volunteer at the residential care home, reading stories to the residents, and recognised that they had some amazing stories to tell. So they decided if they won the £3,000 grant, they were going to publish a book on childhood experiences that took into account the residents and their experiences and allowed that comparison. It was such a convincing case because they were so engaged and they had such a clear impact that they did secure the grant, and now all funds from that book are going back into the care home. So the legacy there is amazing. But also the legacy for that young person in terms of engagement in school, participation in school, and as a result, attainment has been really, you know, I've heard her speak and she's very powerful when she speaks about that journey. I just want to then kind of talk on some stats on kind of routes into volunteering through education as well. So we very much don't want YPI to be delivered over 12 weeks and then forgotten about. That there has to be a legacy from that, from schools' point of view in terms of skills development, but also routes into social activism. And that's what we see. So 29% of our students have stayed in touch with their charities post YPI. These are from our survey results. 13% into volunteering, 10% into fundraising, and 10% supporting other events. But the other stats are really interesting as well. So 19% have now considered doing volunteering as a result of YPI, and 11% considering that they might work in the third sector. And I think that's a really crucial thing that often gets forgotten when we're talking about employment, is the third sector is a key and a huge employer within Scotland, and it shouldn't be sort of forgotten about. So just the capacity for YPI to lead into other routes. And we've already spoken about the real benefits of volunteering that can have for a young person. Just another brief example before I pass on to Dunblane to bring this to life even more. Peak is a charity in Glasgow, and they have some great stats from their YPI engagement as well. So of course the grants are great. If they ever secure the £3,000 grants, they get a lot from that. But more importantly, it is that capacity to engage with young people in an authentic, real world way. So 12 volunteers have already come through YPI, all of them receiving Saltern Youth Achievement Awards. So it's not just a tokenistic, those young people are getting sort of awards and accreditation as a result of their engagement. One of the Bannerman YPI members was the Peak Rising Star. She has become a sort of key volunteer for them. And Peak state that of the 25 staff members they have, 12 of them started off as volunteers. So they kind of see these routes from an education-based programme into potential employment for those young people. So that's really, really powerful. So I'm now going to hand over to Dunblane, who are going to talk about what their experience of YPI and their journey and how it's linked to their student engagement, skill development, and also attainment. Stop sharing. Thank you.
I'm just going to share the screen. Is it up there?
Nope, not yet.
Oh, here we go.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, well, like everybody else, thank you very much for this opportunity to share our journey with YPI. It's a great thing that's going on here, and we're very, very pleased to be involved as we have been for the last 6 years. Obviously, what we're going to be talking about is our, in-school experience in terms of why we did this, what we felt that YPI could do for us. I'm going to speak a little bit about some of the strategic things that we felt, and then my colleague Abby is going to be speaking about process. So therefore, at Dunblane, what we wanted was to move away from what necessarily can be a dominant culture in schools and in schooling, which I think is fantastically summarized by Roald Dahl. I don't think it's been presented in any way like that better before, is that the adult world seems to think that the young people do not understand anything about what is going on, and therefore we tell them what they are going to do, and therefore we create curriculums that envelop them rather than allowing them to create those. So as Hart indicated, what we have is a situation where in much education, learners are tokenized and decoration to what necessarily goes on. What YPI provided for us was a fantastic opportunity to allow young people to be the co-creators. And this is what Hart calls level 8 of participation, where young people actually are making and creating their learning. And this fits with obviously the learner participation 4 arenas framework, which focuses on the quality of what it is that they are doing, not the quantity of what it is that they are doing. And when we moved into CFE, obviously one of the most important things was the decluttering of the curriculum to allow young people to frame their learning in ways which was important for them, not because we were telling them to do it, but because we were listening to them, and therefore that they could shape their world. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to move away from a focus on the idea that it was about what they could know and what they were able to do, and wanted then to focus on the idea of the kinds of people that they would necessarily become. Now, what you have here is a process by which we're focusing on developing pupils' capacity to understand the world in which they are working. And there are lots and lots of skills that come through YPI that allows them to engage with their community, to understand who they are, to create metacognitive frameworks that situate themselves in the world. I think as Lindsay just indicated, people who are disenfranchised by a system that sees them as outside of it. And once they're allowed inside it to shape it for themselves, they can make sense of the world through that particular lens. So what we looked at was this idea of what are the qualitative things that we want to come out of YPI and what it supports. And what we very much saw was the idea of we trust young people to go through the process, to go out into the community and to engage with those charities and those people that are in their community that support them, to allow them to imagine their curriculum, to collaborate with coaches and teachers and community experts in developing their learning. Most importantly, though, they're doing this for the community, not for themselves, not because of attainment, not because of any kind of funding or so on and so forth. They're doing it because they're giving back to the community, and they're using their creativity and their thought processes to find solutions to situations they find themselves in. And I love this quote from the hashtag IWill website, where the challenge is the idea of meaningful. I think it was touched on by Education Scotland previously, this idea of, is it meaningful? Because if it isn't meaningful and authentic, then therefore it has no impact whatsoever. And what YPI is provides a authentic framework in which you can develop these particular skills. There is fear here, and Abby will come on to this in a minute, because there are things around the uncertainty, the idea of the chaos. There's lots of kids running around doing lots of things. They're going outside of school and so on and so forth. But that joy and that kind of buzz that you get from the kids leading their own learning is absolutely extraordinary and absolutely fantastic. So therefore, embracing the failure, understanding the challenges of that particular process is something that you have to enjoy and do if you're going to make this authentic and real. So I'm now going to pass on to Abby for process, and she'll talk to you about some of the things that we get up to.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to, talk to you about the journey that we went on. So Dunblane High's got a long history of academic success, and the pressures of maintaining that success year in, year out has meant that the courses across the department and across the school were designed with academic achievement at the centre of them. And although CFE placed the learners at the heart of education, with the focus on the 4 capacities, fear of failure meant that more often than not our focus was mainly on producing successful and confident young people, but they existed in a bubble that was completely separate from the local community and the world that they inhabited. So during the first few years of the CFE, departments across the school worked really hard to shift the focus, and we created lots of new and exciting IDL experiences for the students. But these often felt quite forced, and invariably the constraints of kind of knowledge that must be learned for progression into the senior phase stifled any creativity and exposure to experiences which were truly transformative. So when we decided to have a curricular refresh in 2013, we were provided with an opportunity to really think about the kind of curriculum that we wanted to deliver, but also the kind of school that we wanted Dunblane High to be. And the refresh was less about improving academic results and much more about improving the culture and ethos of the school and building links and partnerships with the local community. Perched up on the hill in Dunblane, the school is geographically really separate from the community, and it was our opportunity to put the school at the heart of the community. At the heart of the curricular refresh in English was the idea of providing each year group in the BGE with an enrichment activity which would enable them to work with the local community and forge much stronger links. And the senior management recognised the value in this and provided us with all the sort of period allocations that we needed, which would enable us to deliver it. And then Richard presented us with the opportunity to take part in YPI. It seemed the perfect way to conclude the BGE. It's embedded within the 3rd year English curriculum, and it's the finale to the students' BG experience. It allows them to harness all of the skills that they've developed throughout the BG course, and it provides an invaluable opportunity to look beyond themselves and the wider community and consider how they can make a difference. And because it's embedded within the curriculum, that's been kind of fundamental to the success of it within the school, and it's got the absolute support of the management team. Although the English department deliver and facilitate most of the programme, YPI has provided us with the opportunity to collaborate with other departments in the school. We've got RME and business studies who've embraced the opportunity to be involved. And over the years, the programme's evolved, with the YPI launch becoming a key milestone in the pupils' BGE journey. Our February launch day is a day of timetable where the S3 engage in a series of workshops which include team building, exploring social issues, developing a business case. Last year we planned for another really ambitious series of workshops which should include input from other areas in the school to assist with the creative element of presenting, such as drama, art, dance, media, which is an area that we're wanting to develop in the future. And what followed is 6 weeks of complete chaos. Me sending out pleas to pupils to stop raiding the art cupboard for supplies, placating the cleaners who are fed up cleaning paint stains off every surface in the school, and trying to find storage for the various weird and wonderful props that the students had tried to create before next class. The buzz and the excitement and enthusiasm of the school is completely infectious, and it energises the school. We've got charities visiting the school, groups organising trips to visit the charities. The classroom and the flexible learning areas are noisy with creativity. Support from the whole school has been central to the YPI success because it requires flexibility and understanding on everybody's part to provide the students with the time and the resources they require. The class finals are held at the end of March, and the winning group from each class has a month to hone and refine their presentations. The final marks the transition from the BGE to the senior phase, and it's the perfect forum from which to showcase all the skills, the learning and the achievements which they developed in the BGE. It brings together the local charities, it brings together members of the local community, the younger year groups are involved, all to celebrate youth philanthropy. Most of the S3 year group are involved in the final in some capacity, whether it's as members of welcoming committees, providing tea and cakes for the visitors, designing invitations. It's a collective effort that brings the whole school together. So YPO has been completely transformative for staff and pupils alike. delivering the YPI programme has required us to be really brave, to trust in the pupils, to provide them with freedom to explore, to make mistakes. We've had to completely relinquish control and allow the students to lead it. We've had to embrace the uncertainty, and we've had to embrace the absolute chaos that seems to reign when it's happening. So the result of it speaks for itself. The students have emerged from the process much more empowered. They're independent individuals who are able to work collaboratively and in partnership with others. They take risks, they ask difficult questions, they put others' needs before their own. Prejudices and naive misconceptions are challenged, they're more self-aware, and they're certainly more socially aware. A few of them continue to support the charities, many of them continue to raise money, and the hope is that many more are going to go on to volunteer. The YPI programme has totally transformed our young people's understanding and interaction with the local community. It's forced them to look at society much more critically, to develop social conscience, and which in turn has had a positive impact on the ethos of our school. And a happy byproduct of that has been the incredible impact the YPI has had on attainment, which Richard's going to go on and talk about.
Yeah, so thank you, Abby. I mean, the last thing there, we believe that what we get is excellence and equity for all. But what we have is an example of learning in action, you know, that it happens within the school space. And what we've also wanted to do, and Abby alluded to at the beginning, was we wanted to move away from what I've termed the tyranny of external exams. All the reasons why you don't do voluntary work, or you don't do social action, or you don't get kids out of the school walking around when you're trying to get people involved, is that they have to sit an exam. And what we wanted to show was that learning in action is something that supports the development of young people to go on and to be successful, to indicate that the pressure and the barrier that exams imposes upon people, and very difficult to do in Dunblane, is something that stops us from doing certain things. And what we wanted to maintain, that if we are only interested in attainment rather than the people that are going through our education system, then we believe also as well that it works. When we were bumping along over the years before our curriculum refresh, we were having spikes and ups and downs in terms of our achievement in S4 in terms of the national fives. What we got after we started YPI was we got a jump and then a sustained jump in the attainment across the years we've been involved in this, where 80% of our young people plus are getting 5 at 5 in S4, which is a fantastic achievement for the school. But also as well, we do believe that it is something directly linked to the fact that the S3 get this experience and then they cohere as a group, learning those skills that Abby talked about, and then apply them as they're going through their S4. So therefore, the attainment is something that YPI and volunteering and social action brings. But it also as well, and I think this is far more important than any kind of exam, is that what it does is it builds a society that we want to live in. And we have to recognize that we now live in a society that is more obsessed with individualism and self-gratification and avarice. And what we wanted for our school was it stood for those things that we have written there. And what YPI has done for us is given us the support and the framework to embed this kind of ethos. It is qualitative, it is not quantitative. We're not interested in counting how many times they're like this. What we can do is we can see our community becoming more of a genuine community-centered place, of which our school is an integral part. And that is why we're glad we're here today, and that is why we love being part of YPI. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard and Abby, for that as well, and Lindsay too for your input earlier. It's amazing. I feel really inspired myself, so I'm sure everyone else on the call will too. Just before we kind of finish up as well, we can take some kind of questions. If anybody has any questions for Jackie, Karen, Lindsay, Richard or Abby, feel free to kind of pop them in the chat, and we can spend the next kind of 5 minutes or a wee bit over. If we fancy going over, we can do that as well. Also, Jane is going to pop a wee link in the chat to our new Power of Youth Charter that we've launched as part of our new strategic plan, and we're asking organisations to kind of sign up to that charter and make a commitment to youth social action and volunteering going forward. So YPI and the Wood Foundation signed the charter earlier this week, and Jonathan Christie wrote an excellent blog on that as well, so definitely kind of have a wee look at that if you're looking for any inspiration. But yeah, I'll open the floor to any sort of questions, so please feel free to kind of raise your hand if you have a question, or pop them in the chat box and we can answer them over the next 5 minutes. Anyone want to ask any kind of questions to anybody?
It's been a long day for everyone, Jenny, I think.
I know, I think that's it. It's got to 5 o'clock, hasn't it? We're all like Zoom fatigued. But no, if we don't have any questions, that's absolutely fantastic. We can end a few minutes early. So I'll just say a massive thank you again then, if there's no any questions, to our speakers. So thank you so much everyone for joining, full stop, and then thank you so much for the inputs on our speakers as well. It's really great to hear everything, and we've recorded the session as well, so we'll definitely kind of send that out to you guys afterwards. And yeah, just please get involved. IWill week is on for the rest of this week, so we have no more events in Scotland happening. This was our last one, but there are events happening around the rest of the UK that I'm sure you're more than welcome to kind of join in and sign up to. And we also have loads of stuff still happening on social media throughout the week, so please get involved and help kind of share the power of youth. And yeah, thank you so much. If there's nothing else, then I'll just say a goodbye and a thank you for about the millionth time. I seem to just keep saying thank you over and over. But yeah, have a lovely evening, guys, and enjoy the rest of IWill week.
Thanks, Jenny. You too. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.